It was a beautiful day for hiking, and my group of friends and I were eager to explore the Pacific Northwest. As we walked deeper into the woods, we noticed strange footprints on the ground. They were too large to belong to any human we knew of and too distinct to be from any bear species we were familiar with. Although we felt uneasy, we pushed on, determined to enjoy the day. But the sounds of the forest grew more ominous as the day progressed. The rustling of leaves became distant growls and the atmosphere grew darker. Suddenly, we heard a roar that echoed through the forest, unlike any animal we had ever heard before. It was a deafening, guttural noise that made our hearts race. We turned around to see a massive creature standing before us. It was over 8 feet tall and covered in shaggy hair. Its face was distorted and inhuman, and its eyes glowed with a wild fury. We were petrified, frozen in fear, not knowing what to do. As the creature approached us, we could feel our hearts pounding in our chests. But just as it reached us, it stopped and stared at us with its glowing eyes. We stood there, trembling, unsure of what to do next. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature turned around and vanished into the forest, leaving us in a state of shock and disbelief. We were shaken by the experience, but knew we had to get out of the woods as quickly as possible. We gathered our things and started running back the way we came, but then we heard the creature's roar again, followed by the sound of its heavy footsteps. We turned around to see the creature charging towards us, its eyes glowing with an intense rage. We knew we had to defend ourselves, so we grabbed our hiking poles and formed a circle, but the creature was too fast and too powerful. It lunged at us, knocking us all to the ground. It was then that we realized it wasn't attacking us, but rather protecting us. As we lay there, dazed and confused, the creature disappeared once again, leaving us with more questions than answers. We reported our encounter to the authorities, but they dismissed it as a hallucination or an overactive imagination. However, we knew what we had seen, and we would never forget the terrifying encounter with Bigfoot in the deep, dark woods. Years went by, and the experience began to fade from our memories. We moved on with our lives, but we still had a fascination with the paranormal and the unexplained. One day, we received an invitation to a conference on cryptozoology, the study of hidden animals. We were intrigued and decided to attend. As we listened to the various speakers, we were amazed by the stories of creatures that were thought to be extinct or never existed. But then the keynote speaker was introduced. He was a renowned cryptozoologist who had dedicated his life to the study of Bigfoot. As he spoke, we were transfixed. He showed us photographs of footprints, recordings of vocalizations, and even hair samples that were thought to be from Bigfoot. But then, he showed us a video that made our jaws drop. It was a video of a creature that looked exactly like the one we had encountered years ago in the woods. The video had been taken by a group of hikers who had seen the creature near the same spot where we had encountered it. We were stunned. It was clear that we had not imagined the encounter, and that Bigfoot was more than just a myth or legend. The keynote speaker told us that Bigfoot was a highly intelligent creature that had managed to avoid being detected by humans for centuries. He also mentioned that some Native American tribes had legends about Bigfoot and regarded it as a sacred creature. We left the conference with more questions than answers, but we were also filled with a sense of wonder and awe. We couldn't help but wonder what other mysteries the world held. As we walked back to our cars, we noticed that the woods around us had become eerily quiet. We couldn't help but feel as though we were being watched. Suddenly we heard a rustling in the bushes and we froze. But then we saw it. It was Bigfoot standing before us once again, but this time it didn't look as menacing as it had before. It simply stood there, watching us with its glowing eyes. We didn't know what to do, but then we remembered what the keynote speaker had said about Bigfoot being a sacred creature. We slowly approached the creature, our hearts racing, and extended our hands toward it. To our surprise, the creature didn't attack us. Instead, it sniffed our hands and then gently placed its massive hand on top of ours. It was a moment that we would never forget. As the creature turned around and disappeared into the forest, we were left with a newfound respect for the unknown and a deeper appreciation for the mysteries of the world. From that day on, we became advocates for the protection of Bigfoot and other creatures that were thought to be extinct or hidden from the world. Our encounter had taught us that there was still so much we didn't know about the world, and that we needed to preserve and protect it for future generations. In the end, our encounter with Bigfoot not only changed our lives, but it also opened our minds to the infinite possibilities of the universe. We knew that we would never forget that day, and that our encounter with Bigfoot would always remain one of the most profound experiences of our lives. I still can't believe what happened to us at Rocky Mountain National Park. It was supposed to be a fun weekend of hiking and camping, but it turned into the most terrifying experience of our lives. We were a group of 4 friends who had been planning this trip for months. We were all avid hikers and loved exploring the great outdoors. We had packed our backpacks with all the essentials and were ready to take on the challenge of the Rocky Mountains. On the second day of our hike, we came across a cave that we hadn't seen on the map. It was nestled deep in the mountains, and there was something eerie about it. We couldn't help but feel drawn to it, as if there was something inside that was calling to us. As we approached the cave, we heard a strange voice coming from within. It was a low, guttural sound that made the hair on the back of our necks stand up. We hesitated for a moment, but then curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to investigate. We cautiously entered the cave, our flashlights illuminating the way. The voice grew louder as we got closer, and we realized that it was coming from a dark corner of the cave. Suddenly, we saw it. It was a figure looming in the shadows, with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through our souls. We couldn't see its face, but we knew that it was something otherworldly. We were paralyzed with fear, unable to move or speak. The creature continued to emit that low, growling sound, and we felt as though it was trying to communicate with us. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished into thin air. We were left standing there, trembling with fear and confusion. We decided to leave the cave and head back to our campsite. We didn't speak about what had happened, but we all knew that we had experienced something paranormal. The rest of the trip was filled with a sense of unease, as if we were being watched by something unseen. We heard strange noises in the night, and our tents shook violently as if being jolted by an earthquake. On the final day of our hike, we were packing up our gear when we heard that same low, growling sound. It was coming from behind us, and we turned around to see that same figure standing there, staring at us with its glowing eyes. We knew that we had to get out of there, and we ran as fast as we could down the mountain. We didn't stop until we reached the safety of our cars, and we didn't speak about what had happened until we were miles away from the park. To this day, we still can't explain what we saw in that cave at Rocky Mountain National Park, but we know that it was something paranormal, something that we may never fully understand, and we'll never forget the terror that we felt that day as we came face to face with the unknown. I had always been an avid hiker, and I was thrilled when my friends agreed to come with me on a trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. We arrived at the park early in the morning, ready to explore the vast wilderness that awaited us. Our group consisted of 5 people: myself, Matt, Sarah, Lisa, and John. We had all been friends since childhood and had shared countless adventures together, but little did we know that the trip to Rocky Mountain National Park would be our most terrifying adventure yet. We spent the first few days hiking along the picturesque trails of the park, taking in the breathtaking scenery and enjoying the fresh mountain air. But on the 4th day, we came across a trail that was not marked on our map. We decided to follow the trail, curious to see where it led. As we walked deeper into the woods, we began to hear strange noises around us. The rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, and the sound of footsteps seemed to follow us wherever we went. Despite our growing unease, we continued on the trail, hoping to find something exciting at the end. That's when we saw it, a large, dark figure standing in the distance. It was covered in fur and stood on two legs, like a massive gorilla. We were all frozen with fear, unable to move or speak. The creature let out a deafening roar, and we knew that we had to get out of there. We ran as fast as we could, but the creature was hot on our heels. Its footsteps were getting closer and closer, and we could feel its breath on the back of our necks. We stumbled onto a clearing, and the creature suddenly vanished into thin air. We were panting and sweating, our hearts pounding in our chests. We had no idea what we had just encountered, but we knew that it was something otherworldly. The rest of the trip was filled with an eerie sense of unease. We heard strange whispers in the night, and our tents shook violently as if being rocked by an invisible force. On the final day of our trip, we decided to hike up to the top of a nearby mountain. As we reached the summit, we saw the same dark figure standing in the distance, its glowing eyes fixed on us. We tried to run, but our legs were heavy and we couldn't move. The creature started to move towards us, its massive form blocking out the sun. That's when we heard a voice. It was a soft, melodic voice, unlike anything we had ever heard before. The voice told us to close our eyes and focus on our breathing, and we did as we were told. When we opened our eyes again, the creature was gone, and the sun was shining brightly once again. We were all confused and disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. As we made our way back to our cars, we couldn't help but wonder if we had just encountered a Bigfoot or some other paranormal creature. We didn't speak about the incident, but we all knew that it was something that would stay with us for the rest of our lives. Years later, I returned to Rocky Mountain National Park, hoping to find some answers, but the woods were silent, and there was no sign of the creature that had haunted our dreams for so long. To this day, I still wonder what we encountered on that fateful trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. Was it a figment of our imagination, or did we really come face to face with something paranormal? I may never know for sure, but the memory of that experience will stay with me forever. I had been looking forward to this hiking trip for weeks, but as we made our way up the mountain, the weather took a turn for the worse. Thick fog enveloped us, obscuring our vision and making it difficult to navigate the rocky terrain. My group consisted of 4 other hikers: Mark, Rachel, Tom, and Emily. We were all experienced hikers, but the fog was making it nearly impossible to see where we were going. As we trudged through the fog, we heard strange noises around us. It sounded like someone was whispering in our ears, but when we turned to look, there was no one there. Our unease grew with each passing minute, and we all felt like something was watching us from the shadows. We tried to keep moving, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to stay on the trail. That's when we saw it. A figure looming in the distance, barely visible through the thick fog. We couldn't make out any details, but we all knew that it was not human. As we approached the figure, we realized that it was a strange statue, a towering, faceless figure with long, spindly arms. It was unlike anything we had ever seen before, and it sent shivers down our spines. We tried to move past the statue, but as we did, the fog grew even thicker, and we were suddenly disoriented. We lost track of each other, and I found myself alone in the woods. I called out to my friends, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. I was completely alone, with no idea where I was or how to get back to the trail. That's when I heard the whispers again, soft, ethereal voices that seemed to be coming from all around me. I felt like I was going insane, and I stumbled blindly through the fog, hoping to find my way back to safety. But as I wandered deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder, and I felt like something was watching me from the darkness. I tried to run, but my legs were heavy, and I felt like I was moving through molasses. That's when I saw the figure again, the faceless statue, looming over me like a giant. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or even breathe. Suddenly, the statue started to move, its long arms reaching out to me like tendrils. I felt like I was being pulled into another dimension, and I closed my eyes, hoping that it was all just a nightmare. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the trail, surrounded by my friends. They looked just as terrified as I was, and we all knew that something had happened in the fog that we could not explain. We hurried back down the mountain, eager to escape the eerie presence that seemed to be following us. As we reached the safety of our car, we couldn't help but wonder what we had encountered in the fog. Years later, I still think about that day on the mountain and the strange statue that seemed to come to life in the fog. Was it a figment of our imagination, or did we really encounter something paranormal that day? I may never know for sure, but the memory of that experience will stay with me forever. As we drove away, we all felt a sense of relief to be out of the fog and away from the strange statue. But as we looked back, we saw that the statue was gone, as if it had never been there at all. The experience left us all shaken, and we didn't speak much on the drive back to town. When we got back to our hotel, we immediately went to our rooms and tried to forget about what had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still following me, even though we were miles away from the mountain. The whispers continued to haunt me, and I felt like I was being watched from every corner of the room. That night, I had a nightmare. I was back on the mountain, lost in the thick fog. I could hear the whispers growing louder, and I knew that something was coming for me. As I stumbled through the fog, I saw the statue again, its long arms reaching out to grab me. I tried to run, but I was trapped with nowhere to go. Just as the statue was about to grab me, I woke up, gasping for breath. It took me a few moments to realize that it was just a dream, but the terror lingered on. The rest of the trip was uneventful, but I couldn't wait to get back home. I didn't want to think about the strange experience we had on the mountain, but it was always there in the back of my mind. When I got back home, I did some research on the area, hoping to find some explanation for what we had encountered. That's when I discovered that the mountain we had hiked on was known for strange occurrences, including sightings of apparitions and strange lights in the sky. I couldn't help but wonder if our experience was connected to the paranormal activity in the area. Had we stumbled upon something that we weren't meant to see? Or was it just a trick of the mind, brought on by the thick fog and our own fears? Years later, I still think about that day on the mountain and the strange statue that seemed to come to life in the fog. I may never know what really happened, but the memory of that experience will stay with me forever. From that day on, I approach hiking with a newfound sense of caution. I never want to encounter something like that again, but I can't help but wonder what other mysteries the mountains hold